This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
I'm Kyle Malin, editor of the MERS newsletter, filling in for Steve Gruber today. While Steve goes out hunting in the great woods, as some of our listeners, I'm sure, are doing or have been doing. The Syrian refugee situation is the big hot topic of the day. News from yesterday had Oakland County Executive Al Brooks Patterson warning Pontiac's mayor that a city project to house Syrian refugees would allow the Islamic State infiltrators to slip into the community. According to the Detroit News, he says, quote, I am dismayed by Pontiac's agreement to develop a Syrian refugee village within its borders. Pontiac is the county seat for Oakland County and thus a focal point. Any programs such as the acceptance of refugees from Syria under certain current conditions constitutes an immediate threat of imminent danger. That's from Brooks Patterson, the Oakland County executive. A lot of politicians talking about it. We got comments yesterday from the Attorney General, Bill Schuette. Candace Miller has spoken about this. Tim Greimel. Pete Hoekstra was on the Off the Record set yesterday talking about it. Scott from Iron Mountain. He's not a politician, but he's on the other end of the line. He wants to chime in on this. Good morning, Scott.
Hey, good morning, Kyle. Good job.
Hey, thank you very much. What's your take on the situation?
Well, I hope Steve gets his 30-point buck first. You know, if he calls in, let's say, I want to hear what he gets here. But, no, hey, I think we're getting a little carried away with this Syrian refugee deal. I mean, especially all the governors. I mean, I think they're a little naive. I mean, you know, we're letting illegal Mexicans come over here every day, and they're not worried about them.
That's an interesting.
We don't vet them, so you know, let these guys come over. We don't vet the Mexicans when they come over. It's no big deal. You know, I know my president's got our back. In fact, if I know my president, he's probably going to adopt 6 or 7 of these and put them in the White House and fill up them extra rooms. But everybody's getting a little carried away. So
I sense a little
everybody take a chill. Everything will be okay. Our president's got our back. So.
I sense a little sarcasm there from you, Scott. Thank you. Okay. We need a little of that in the morning. Thanks for the call
all right,
in.
Man, have a good one.
You too. Thanks for the call in. Yeah, just a hot topic all around. What to be done about the Syrian refugees. Governor Snyder is in Las Vegas this week at the National Governors Association. They had a conference call, the governors did, with President Barack Obama, where they talked about this, urging that the federal government do whatever it can to try and vet these individuals before they come into the United States. In reality, the governors don't have a lot of say in where these Syrian refugees are put. Now, the governors have their bully pulpit. They can say what they want to say. They can kind of lay the groundwork out to say, you know, whether the Syrians come in or not, you know, making their state hospitable or not. But in the end, the federal government can put them where they want. And it's really up to us to swallow it if we want to. Michigan, obviously, is a very appealing place because of our strong Arab American community in the Dearborn area, and is one of the top 3 places, or top 3 states in the country where these refugees would likely end up. Switching gears here a little bit. The fracking initiative, hydraulic fracking. This is a deep drill that is bore into the earth that is used to extract natural gas, by and large, which has become one of the big heating elements here in the state of Michigan. It's really replacing coal as the big energy source. There is a group of environmentalists who have been collecting ballot signatures to try and ban fracking, try and get this on the 2016 ballot so you and I can vote whether we should ban this process of hydraulic fracking. They are concerned that the drills are going so deep into the earth that it could taint our water supply. Well, they went to the Secretary of State's office yesterday. They're time clock to gather 253 signatures was expiring, and they said they had only gotten 150,000. So they are not going to get on the ballot. This is the third time that they've tried to get on the ballot here in Michigan, and the third time was not the charm. They got a little closer, and they did a lot better than they used to, or they had in their prior two attempts, but still no go. Now, they said they're still going to try to do something to get this on the ballot, but this group does not have a large financial backing. Typically in this state, the groups that have a very strong union organization or have a lot of money that are able to hire paid circulators are the groups that get their things in front of the legislature or get them on the ballot. Now, a little earlier this segment, I was talking about the possible ballot initiatives that we could see in the 2016 ballot. Who's actually out in the field right now collecting signatures? Now, at MERS News, we took a look at this a little earlier this year, and I just want to run down some of the initiatives that are out in the field right now. And it kind of lays the case out that it's very possible, at this read right now, it's very possible we could get nothing on the ballot. We're going to start with the Citizens for Fair Taxes. Now, this is the group of the unions who want to raise the corporate income tax by 87%, and then they want that $900 million raised to go to the roads. Haven't heard anything from that group lately. It's possible they could get the signatures, but we haven't heard any activity from them. And outside of those three labor groups putting money in, they have not gotten what you would say a lot of support from kind of the big dogs. I'm thinking like the UAW, AFSCME, SEIU. None of those labor groups have kicked in with any money. MEA, none of them have come in and said, yeah, that's a fight we want to take on. The prevailing wage folks, the people who want to repeal prevailing wage, they gathered a bunch of signatures, took them to the Secretary of State, who said, these things are garbage. We're going to throw them out. And that's exactly what they did. The prevailing wage repeal folks are starting from scratch. And even if they do get the signatures, they're able to gather these signatures. They would go to the legislature. And from what we're hearing, there's the votes in the House and the Senate to approve it anyway. So it wouldn't end up on the ballot because the legislature would then just go ahead and approve it. Now, the flip side of that is the unions, if they're given enough time, they could go out and try and get a referendum going to try and put something on the ballot to try and repeal the repeal of prevailing wage. But we're getting a little too far afield, I think, before we can start opining on that. Marijuana legalization, there's two ballot initiatives out in the field right now on that. And one of the groups, I don't know if they even have any money. The other group I know doesn't have any money, and they're doing it completely through grassroots work. I think both of those are questionable whether they're going to get on the ballot, particularly since the Ohio voters had a cannabis legalization proposal on the ballot, and that didn't go anywhere. The voters said, you know what, you're creating a monopoly. We're not ready to go there yet. If our friends in Ohio aren't ready for it, we know that the voters here in Michigan are going to be very dubious about what kind of proposal is stuck in front of them. The only one that I think has a chance maybe is paid sick leave. That's another union gathering. We're going to keep our eyes on that and other ballot proposals as they make their way through the process. I'm Kyle Mullen, editor of MERS, filling in for Steve Gruber. We'll be back after this break.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
You're listening to the Steve Gruber Show. I'm Kyle Mullen, editor of the MERS Newsletter, filling in today. You know, last segment I talked about potential ballot initiatives that we could see in 2016 here in the state of Michigan. I did neglect one here as I was sitting here thinking about it. There is an effort, a new effort, to get on the ballot in November 2016, a civil rights initiative that would essentially protect individuals based on gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, and sex. This would be a change to the Michigan Constitution, so this would be putting it in the state's highest document that folks who are gay, lesbian, or transgendered cannot be discriminated against. Now, this one, I believe, actually does have a shot, and I neglected to think about this a little earlier in the program. But this one has the backing of Oakland County Executive Brooks Patterson, Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy. It's also got a money flow of business leaders who are willing to put up to get the circulators, to get out and get the signatures needed to get it on the ballot. Now, the only rub I see here on this is that it does not have unanimous support as of yet from folks of the LGBT community. There are folks in that community who believe that this is a risky venture. They saw what happened in Houston when the voters in Houston voted down something very similar. The campaign got very ugly, focused on transgendered folks' use of public restrooms, and it went down in the toilet from there, so to speak. All right, well, switching gears, we got Matt from Okemos, who's been very patient on the other end of the line. Matt, thanks for hanging on. What's on your mind today?
Well, we're talking about the Muslim immigration thing. I think we could set up Muslim sanctuary cities, and Democrats would endorse that, and that would be a total danger. I could see them doing that down the road. The other thing is these regimes have been controlling their people through religion, and now religion is coming back to take over the regimes in the Middle East. The same thing is happening in the universities, where they've been preaching this stuff for so many years of radical leftists in the universities. Now radical leftists are coming back to take the universities. It's the same thing they've brought to Munster.
Now, you were talking about radicals. Now, are you talking about these protests that we're seeing in universities, like here at Michigan State yesterday?
Well, I'm not familiar with the Michigan State one, but I do it around the nation. It's about Black Lives Matter and grievances that people are having about stuff that may have happened or may not have happened. And they're coming out of the woodwork now to take, it's about power. They want to have some power. It's really not a Martin Luther King thing.
Yeah, just to update you here, Matt, Michigan State students protested a Bill Clinton forum, of all places, yesterday. We had dozens of Michigan State students standing outside the Big Ten room at the Kellogg Center, blocking the entrance of about 500 people who wanted to go in and listen to what Bill Clinton had to say. Rather than try and get forceful or try and extricate them from the front door, the folks who were scheduled to be in the room were kind of let in through a side door secretly, and then they were allowed to listen to the speech, and everything went off without a hitch. But again, what we're seeing here, even in our own backyard here at Michigan State, that we are seeing African-American students predominantly, but there are others who are protesting. In this case, they want to see the university create a Department of African American and African Studies. And this is how they're going about stating their opinion.
Well, I disagree with it. I think they should bring it to the board. I mean, they should do it legitimately. This is not the method that anybody would use unless people were blocking them from having it happen. And I don't think we're blocking that. They could bring it to MSU board. I'm sure they'd approve of it. Listen, if any place is liberal, it's the universities. I mean, they should not have a problem there getting anything done.
Right. Now, I see your point. Matt from Okemos, thanks for calling in. If you want to call in, 888-900-9966. Now, joining us on the other end of the line is Ann Schieber. She is with the Mackinac Center for Public Policy. We're going to talk about a completely different subject here. We're going to go to Traverse City, where they are taking a look at some type of initiative to create a Bill of Rights for the homeless. Ann, thanks for joining us on the program. What is this all about?
Good morning. Well, it's not really clear. They drafted a resolution, which is not quite an ordinance, but a legal dealing, a document that says that the homeless should have protected rights, that the people of Traverse City should respect the civil rights of homeless people. And the question to be asked is, well, they already had civil rights. Why do you have to draft a special document to state this?
Now, there
go ahead.
Well, there are some concerns about whether these homeless individuals then are going to be able to, hang around libraries, other public facilities, stay there longer than maybe they are welcome.
Well, that's the speculation, and that's happened in a number of cities where public places have become shelters for homeless people, and homeless populations have been growing in some places, and they have been, according to the people who put this resolution together, in Traverse City. And I think there is an effort to build a shelter, but in the same time, especially in the winter months, the homeless people want a warm place to go. and libraries have often been a popular destination.
Well, I can understand. I used to live in Yuma, Arizona, and you knew when winter was coming when the homeless folks came on down in trains and so forth. Yuma, Arizona is a great place to go in the wintertime. Let me tell you, it never gets too cold down there. Now, you also have seen in here that one part of this resolution in Traverse City raises some concerns related to the First Amendment, since it appears to tell journalists what they can and cannot report. Specifically, it creates an individual right to have economic status not reported in media reports. I don't think that's something you can do. Just being a member of the media, I don't think you can do that.
Tested, and it hasn't come up yet. I mean, this resolution is only a couple of weeks old. But, you know, many times when you have these resolutions, they may cause some trouble. There could be lawsuits involved. Now, in the case of Traverse City, if there's a complaint, somebody could go to the Human Rights Department there and file a complaint, and who knows what may happen. There is a procedure that they follow, and it's not to say that the city's going to file suit, but it could open the door for a lawsuit privately.
Very interesting subject. Ann Schieber, thanks for joining us on the program. She's from the Mackinac Center, talking about a resolution that's floating around Traverse City to give more rights to the homeless. Well, I'm sure that Steve Gruber is going to be keeping his eye on this. I'm Kyle Mullen, editor of MERS, filling in for Steve today. We'll be back after this.
Michigan, born and raised with Midwestern values and Michigan common sense.
You're listening to the Steve Gruber Show. I'm Kyle Mullen, editor of the MERS newsletter. Alex Clark running the board today. He and I have got the same wavelength here with the music. A little Van Halen to start us off. Appreciate Jump. Good stuff here. Joining us on the other end of the line is Ken Braun, an old friend of mine, working for MLive as a columnist right now. Ken, how you doing today?
Not bad, Kyle. How you doing? Good with the Van Halen, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We could play. You know what? I actually like Sammy Hagar a little better than David Lee Roth. Don't tell anybody, though. I'm one of the few.
Your secret's safe with me.
Your latest column in MLive, you talked about the tax code. This seems to be an issue that the presidential candidates keep going back to quite a bit during the campaign. Simplicity of the tax code. The 3-page tax code, as Carly Fiorina likes to talk about. Why has this become such a big issue?
Well, I think it is the tax code itself, the number of books needed to explain it runs to like 76,000 pages or something crazy like that now. It needs to be reduced. It's got too many loopholes. It's got too many. I didn't say it in that column. I've used the term before. We don't have a tax code designed to get revenue. We have a moral code that's designed to create all these incentives to get people to buy a house, to buy more health care than they need, to give money to their churches or whatever, to buy a certain health care plan. It's all of this, and we have higher rates as a result of all of these built-in crazy incentives that should just be wiped away, along with all the pages it takes to explain them, for a flat, low rate that lets people have their money and make their own decisions about how much house they need, how much health care they need, and all of these matters, and just gets the money we need to run our government rather than incentivizes people to do what government wants them to do.
Republicans have the majority in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. Why has this been such a hard thing to get through Congress?
A lot of the things that I just mentioned are, people have a visceral feeling that, it's good that I'm being given more money, I'm given a tax break on my mortgage interest or these other things, and as a result, it's really hard to kill. It's kind of like a third rail deal. You can sell people on the idea of a low rate, but you saw it in the debate. Ted Cruz wants to increase. Marco Rubio, who's I like on a lot of issues, wants to increase the per-child tax credit from $1,000 to $2,500. That sounds great to everybody. You should get a tax break for children. At what point does it stop? People think it's popular. It's hard to kill it, but you create loopholes rather than get rid of them. And people should have children because they love their children, not because they get a tax break or because the government preferences it over not having children.
I guess we saw this here even in Michigan, didn't we, Ken? We saw the governor of this state. One of his first things that he did was simplify the exemptions on the income tax. And right away, he's hit politically by saying, you just created a pension tax. Now we have to pay taxes on our pension income. This is the type of thing that you're talking about that are the political repercussions of doing a simplified tax code.
Fantastic example. That was not a pension tax increase. It was getting rid of a loophole. Most states don't have that exemption for pension income that Michigan did, and as a result, we were paying higher taxes for it. It was a special break that pension income had in Michigan. I think Forbes magazine rated it one of the best retirement states in the nation as a result of that. Well, it's not fair to be not taxing the income of retirees in Michigan so that younger workers with children have to pay more. And the governor made a good choice there, albeit, as you say, one he took some political arrows for. It's really hard to simplify the tax code when you got to go after these politically popular loopholes, and very expensive ones, I might add.
Now, I mentioned Carly Fiorina. She is not the only one talking about a simplified tax code. Which candidates out there do you believe have the best chance of actually getting some reform through if elected?
I think Governor Bush has some good ideas. I think a lot of them have good good ideas about pretty much the ones that come up with the lowest rates with the least amount of revenue impact as far as whether they're requiring a big tax cut on the end of it. If they're requiring lower rates and you hear them say they're willing to get rid of loophole, Ben Carson, for example, was a brave man. He stood up there on that podium and said, "We got to get the rates lower. We got to get rid of the home mortgage interest deduction. I would get rid of even the charitable deduction." I mean, that's just hitting, doing what Governor Snyder did, hitting very popular loopholes that just very expensive loopholes, but they got to go away if we're going to get a simplified tax code. So, Carson has the bravest talk so far. I'll put it that way.
Mike Huckabee is still on this fair tax issue, and I know about 10 years ago when you were a staffer for Leon Drolet and I was covering the Senate for MERS News, the fair tax was a hot topic. It was being championed by Fulton Sheen, and he was the chair of the House Tax Policy Committee, and that was really the best chance that we had to get something here, I think, in this state. I don't know if we're going to get that kind of momentum again, but is the fair tax an idea whose time has come and gone nationally?
I think the fair tax, if we could just, go back 100 years and get rid of the tax code we have and impose the national sales tax, which is what the fair tax is, in place of our income tax, and keep it flat and do it, basically a flat, simple tax of any kind. Income, consumption is a good idea. So if you could wave a magic wand and make the fair tax happen or make a flat tax with no loopholes happen, the world would be a better place. Unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. We've created an income tax system, and to switch from that to a sales tax would require constitutional amendments. The political complexity of getting from there to here is much harder than the fair tax advocates want to admit, and I think they do their cause a great disservice by not being honest about how difficult it would be to move the nation's mindset, let alone its politics, over to that system.
They haven't had any successes in individual states, have they? I mean, there are some states that
I'm aware of, no.
Yeah, because there are some states that don't have income taxes that have sales taxes instead, but I haven't seen this fair tax movement actually flip anybody into changing the system they have into a broader sales tax. And part of the problem with a broader sales tax, too, Ken Braun, is that you start thinking about, well, do you want to tax medicine? Do you want to tax prescriptions? Do you want to tax groceries? And here in Michigan, the thought of taxing groceries is like that third rail you mentioned. We don't want to go there.
Yeah, and as a result, we have higher business taxes on the grocery stores, and effectively, we're paying the same taxes. They're just hidden, and we're lying to people that think that they're getting a tax break on their groceries. So it's and another thing, at least at the state level, that makes it a little tricky is sales taxes in a system with an income tax, which is pretty much everybody's. The revenue streams get kind of volatile. When people cut back their spending, your tax collections go down pretty severely. So it's which you can have a little bit with income taxes too, but I really don't think doing it at a state level is going to. It's definitely not worth the hassle of getting there, and I don't know that. It just seems to me an odd way of talking about getting rid of the. If you've still got an income tax that you got to pay to the federal government, you're filling out your state income taxes generally not as difficult as filling out your federal income taxes. So I don't really understand what the value of doing a state-level fair tax is when you've still got the big monster out there in Washington.
We're talking with MLive columnist Ken Braun. I only got 15 seconds left. Bobby Jindal has dropped out of the presidential race. Who will be the next one to fall?
I would say, probably one of the other lower tier ones, Huckabee maybe.
All right, Mike Huckabee, there you go. I'm still with George Pataki as being the next one to drop out. I had it 3 months ago, and I'm sticking with it. I'm Kyle Mullen, editor of MERS, filling in for Steve Gruber. We'll be back right after this.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
Say you want a revolution, well, you know.
You're listening to the Steve Gruber Show. I'm Kyle Mullen, editor of the MERS newsletter, filling in today. You want to join in on the conversation, 888-900-9966. We've been talking about Syrian refugees. We've been talking about fracking, the anti-fracking ballot proposal. Not going to happen this year. They have not turned in the signatures needed to get on the 2016 ballot, and talk about that. We just had Ken Braun on the other end of the line talking about the presidential candidate's fascination with reforming the tax code. It does sound like a very spiffy thing to do. You've got this mammoth tax code out there, but the tax code was written over time. This has been a product of time, and was created because politicians like the folks who are in office right now have seen a need to create a special break for some specific class of people. And of course, somebody's special tax break means that other people have to pay more. So maybe the idea is we just start from scratch. We start with just the basics when it comes to our tax code. But does that mean that over time that too will swell up and we'll be right back where we are right now? Well, we'll see where it ends up here. The tax code will continue to be a conversation. Carly Fiorina is talking about it. We see Ben Carson is talking about it. Mike Huckabee is a proponent of the fair tax. That's an issue that I have a hard time believing is going to go anywhere. Ken Braun kind of said something along those lines as well. We've got a caller on the other end of the line. Steve from Lansing wants to talk about Michigan's roads. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Thank you. I have a concept, and I want you to tell me if I'm crazy or if you think it has validity.
All right. I'm no psychologist, but I'll do my best here.
Okay, you do that. The first thing you do is you'd set up a bond issue, and you're going to offer like 5% return. And the qualifier is going to be you got to be 55 or more because it's retirement money you're tying up. The second thing you do is any program that's being taxed off of Michigan road tax money needs to find another form of funding, because you're going to turn the entire road process over to MDOT.
Okay, how much bonding are we talking about, Steve?
As much as you need.
Okay,
much as what will be allowed.
Okay, now those are two different numbers now.
Because of the condition, because of the condition of money, and because these seniors can only get maybe 2%, they would flock to 5% open-ended.
Okay.
You have all the money you need.
Okay, so if the governor says we need $1.2 billion, is that going to get us the $1.2 billion? I don't know. Have you run the numbers on that?
Citizens should have the opportunity to give them what they can.
Okay.
At 5%.
Okay, so who's going to pay under this scheme then ultimately? I mean, somebody's going to have to pay under this, right?
That's right. It's going to be the Michigan people, because it's going to be connected to, it's going to be pennies on the dollar for the road tax. That's how you're going to fund this.
Okay.
Or, excuse me, pennies on the gallon.
Okay.
I misspoke.
Okay, so
pennies on the gallon, because it's going to be qualified as a road tax, because that's all you've got on it.
Okay, so
because you found the alternative funding.
I see. So the bonding is going to be connected to the road tax, and the road tax, are you presuming then, as the governor has just signed, that the road tax then just goes up 7.3 cents per gallon on January 1, 2017?
Well, I'm prepared to do whatever I have to, depending on what MDOT tells me. This whole program needs to be demilitarized. Neither a Republican or a Democrat should be allowed to have any say in any of it, because Democrats drive cars and so do Republicans.
Well, I appreciate the input, Steve. Governor Snyder is actually considering selling bonds to start repairing the roads next year while he waits for the higher gas tax and registration fees to kick in starting in 2017. His press secretary said a little earlier this month that he wants to conduct a deep and thorough analysis to make sure that trying to access money in the short term doesn't create long-term challenges through unmanageable debt service or higher interest payments in the future. You know, former Governor John Engler racked up about $900 million in debt around 2001 for his Build Michigan 2 and 3 programs. And then Jennifer Granholm added another $185.7 million on top of that, according to a Senate fiscal analysis. And according to MDOT, from about a year ago, Michigan's already carrying a $1.96 billion road-related principal debt load. So that's one of the things that's weighing on the governor's mind. He's never been one to actually increase Michigan's debt. He's always been trying to find ways to decrease it. So in order to, I guess, increase more money to try and get an initial shot of revenue into the roads, to sell more bonds would kind of be running contrary to where he's been in the past. That's why we're keeping a close eye on what he's doing. But then again, his whole signing of the road package is kind of gone against his philosophy from the get-go, in that he's never been one to try and use potential future revenue to fund anything. So this road package that was recently signed by the governor counts on $600 million in future revenue somewhere down the line. You could call it mystery money. He says that the projections are that the revenue growth will be there over time, that over the next 10 years, revenue will grow 5% on an average over the next 10 years. State revenue will grow by that point. So we can factor in that future revenue growth to pay for the roads, but that is a change of course from this governor. That is not something that he's counted on in the past. And so it's interesting when you want something bad enough, all of a sudden you start changing course. And we're seeing it here with this pyramid project in Grand Rapids. For our listeners in Grand Rapids who are hearing about this company called Switch, this technology company who's talking about bringing 1,000 new jobs into Grand Rapids. And they want to fill that pyramid building that Steelcase vacated all those years ago. Hey, they want their tax incentives, though. We want all the freebies that come with it. And these same lawmakers who have said no to this in the past are now saying, maybe we should be changing course, too. It's interesting how circumstances change your philosophy on things. I'm Kyle Mullen, filling in for Steve Gruber. We'll be back after this.